Hi, I'm Belinda Luscombe. I'm an editor-at-large at Time magazine. The Passage of Power is the fourth in Robert Caro's multi-award-winning, multi-volume biography of President Lyndon Johnson. And he's writing another one, but he's taken some time out to talk to us at Time magazine. Mr. Caro, welcome.
Glad to be here.
So, 4 volumes so far on President Johnson, more than 3,000 pages, 35 years of your life. He's not even one of our rock star presidents. Why Johnson?
Because my books are really about political power in America in the 20th century, and no one understood it better than Lyndon Johnson.
What, in your opinion, is his most clear manifestation of the way he understood power?
Well, the way he managed to get civil rights for black Americans. When he's still in the Senate as majority leader, he gets the first civil rights bill passed in 82 years, the first civil rights bill since Reconstruction. That's not strong enough, so when he becomes president, he gets through the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. You know, at that time, blacks, they could vote, but they didn't vote in significant percentages in America. 43 years after he passes the Voting Rights Act, we have an African-American president, which is, in a way, Lyndon Johnson's legacy.
He was vice president, and we have somebody who might be president even as we speak, considering vice presidential candidates. What advice would you, after this long examination of power that you've done, what advice would you give to Mr. Romney? What should he look for?
I'm not going to give advice to Mr. Romney. I'm going to say a presidential candidate has a great responsibility to America to pick someone who is well fitted for the role. I think John McCain's selection of Sarah Palin is the single most irresponsible act of government that I can remember.
One of my favorite lines in your book is that you say power corrupts, but power also reveals. I wonder if you could explain what you mean by that.
Sure. Power, as you see in my books, in the case of someone like Sam Rayburn or in the power broker Alfred E. Smith, power can cleanse as well as corrupt. Al Smith is a henchman, a ruthless henchman for Tammany Hall, till he becomes governor. Then he goes to the Tammany bosses and said, you must free me. What we must do now is pass social welfare legislation for our people. That's an example of cleansing. What power always does is reveal. Because when a man has or a woman has enough power to do exactly what they want, then we know what it is that they really wanted all along.
And in Johnson, who had voted against civil rights legislation so many times, that he was the guy who put that through. So your suggestion is that's what he'd always wanted?
That's a perfect example. Power always reveals. When he was in college, he takes time out to teach Mexican kids to earn money to continue college. He becomes president. He tells an aide, I'll tell you a secret. I swore to myself then if I ever had the power to help these kids, I would do it. Now I have the power, and I'll tell you something, I intend to use it.
Oh, do you remember where you were the day Johnson became president?
Yes, the day Kennedy was assassinated. I was one of the last people in the United States to learn about it, because I was in the middle of the Mojave Desert. I've never told this story. I was in the middle of the Mojave Desert. I was an investigative reporter for Newsday, and I had been investigating fraudulent real estate developments in the middle of the Mojave Desert. There was nothing there, but they were selling these home sites to retirees in the Northeast. I wrote about it, and the Senate sent a couple of investigators down with me to find these people and bring them back to Washington. So we were driving around in this untracked desert where you couldn't get radio reception then we were around Kingman, Arizona. That evening, we're driving back towards Las Vegas where we were staying. And there's a truck driver as we turn onto a main highway, and he waves us over and says, did you hear what happened? The president's been killed. And that's how we found out about it, and that was approximately 6 hours after it happened.
Wow. You were started off actually as a journalist, and you gave up journalism because you were frustrated with the form. It was too short and too deadline driven, and you felt like you could not really wrestle with the issue of power in that medium. And I wonder what you think of the speed and brevity of the information age in which we now live.
Well, it's very foreign to me. You know, to me, when you say, why did you leave journalism? It's because I always had to write stories while I still had questions that I wanted to ask. To me, time is truth. Time equals truth. I mean, there is no one truth, but there are an awful lot of objective facts. And the more facts you manage to obtain, the closer you will come to whatever truth there is. That's something you can do in writing books. It's not really something you can do in daily journalism.
How does it feel to have a person occupy your thoughts for as long as Johnson has occupied yours? Is it like being in love? Do you feel like you have a relationship with him at the end, or it must be a very unusual? He must have a usual place in your mind.
Sometimes you feel, I know what he's going to do next, and he does it. Then you feel you know him.
What do you think Johnson would say about your books?
You know, it's interesting. Johnson always wanted people to know how brilliant he was, how shrewd he was, how clever he was. No one has ever written about how he ran the Senate, how he was the master of the Senate, how he brought electricity to the Hill Country, what he did in those hours following Kennedy's assassination. I think he would want people to know about it. I think he would really blow his stack at some of the stuff in my book, but I think on rereading it or thinking about it, he would realize that these books are really maybe for the first time showing his greatness.
Mr. Caro, thank you so much.